I'm Sarah coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1850. It's double trouble tonight. What? And you're probably going, double trouble? What do you mean? Well, so I had done a cursory. So what happened was I had done a cursory first glance look and pulled information into the tree from what I'd had from family members who had given me information and everything else. And I've got this one great grand aunt that I'm trying to find her death date, and I can't find a death date. So I thought, well, let me go back to the beginning and start all over again. So I did that. And I came across her husband's information, and I was looking at that, and I went to a site that I hadn't been to before for this particular couple. Now, the National Archives in New Zealand actually has a really cool site that you can go into, and you can type in somebody's name, and any files that they have on that person will pop up. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I found out that this couple, my great-grand aunt and her husband, got divorced in 1950. And I'm like, that was only 3 years before he died. That seems kind of late, whatever, but, whatever. And so then I'm looking, and then there is military records for him. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. He was in the military during World War I. What did he do? So I read through all of his files and all that. And I got to the birth date, and I'm like, that's not the birth date that I have. But I went through the other information on there. His next of kin was his wife. It was the right name. And the birth date was different. And then I'm going through the documents, and I get towards the end of the documents, and they actually have a notification of death. And I'm like, wait, what? And it had 11 years. And I thought he died in 1953. He died in 1964, according to these documents. And I'm like, wait, what? And so I started going back through everything I had looked at for this guy and found out that, and did a lot more. And then but first, before I did that, I looked at the other one. I thought, well, then why is there a second military record here? It was another dude. And the other guy had been born, what was it? A year later. One was born in 1890, one was born in 1891. So there was almost 2 years between them, because one was January and one was like November. And the one that was born in November, he's the one that died in 1953. He was also in the military, but not for very long, because he got a medical discharge because of a permanent condition that he had did not allow him to serve. And so I was like, oh. So then I found this will and testament, and I went I found the probate record for one of them. And I'm like, okay, so which one's this one? And go in there and have a look. And it's one that died in 1964, which is actually the one that was married to my great-grand aunt and is the one that he got divorced from, and da-da-da-da. So I'm looking in this, and he had gotten married again. And I'm like, where did this woman come from? And I'm like, no, this can't be the same one. But then as I'm reading through, they've got the documentation in there to show that he died in 1964, and I'm just sort of like, so then I go back to all the stuff that I had pulled in about this guy and started deleting out of there information that related to the other guy with the exact same first name, middle name, and last name. Two of them. They had the same first name, middle name, last name. Were they related? Don't know. Not sure at this point. But it was very interesting, the fact that I had two of them. And I thought, why didn't they show up on the records and everything? Because when I was looking at the birth, deaths, and marriage records, they didn't show up there. So I went in and had a look. There's only one marriage record for them, and that was for my second great-grand-aunt, my great-grand-aunt, when she got married to him. That was the only record there, because they only allow you to go up to 75 years from today. But of course, New Zealand being a day ahead, it's actually the 25th of August 1949 is where I can go up to. I can't put any dates in beyond that. So of course there was nothing in there. So I didn't see any record for a second marriage from the first guy, because they must have got married after 1950 when he got divorced. So I'm like, So I'm looking through the old newspaper. Let's go look at the old newspapers. So we're looking through the old newspapers. Nope, no mention of it in there. And I'm like, Still have not found my great-grand-aunt's death date. But I did find out that there's actually two of her husband. So it was double trouble. I was going in and carefully going through with what I knew, who was the parents of whom, of the kids, making sure that the parents all lined up with everything else. The kids were correct. I had those correct. But there was just other little details that I had that weren't correct. And so it was separating that information and taking it out of this guy's profile and creating a separate profile that I could put the other guy's information into. So I now have two of these guys with exactly the same names. They're born a year apart. but they died 11 years apart. And I'd found a grave thing for what I thought was the first guy, but it was the guy that died in 1953. Now, here is the kicker on this one. They both were in the same city when they died. And I'm like, they were both in Onehunga, which is a city in Auckland. And I was like, isn't that weird? One is in the cemetery that's close to where I said that he died in Onehunga, but he's buried in Mangere. And because I was looking at, they had like, here's a list of this last name, and here's all the people with that last name that are in the cemetery. And I'm like going through the list and going, I don't know that name, don't know any, and I didn't know any of the names. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I wonder if they're related to the other guy. So we started working on him to figure out if he fits into the tree. But meanwhile, my guy that I've been following, don't know where he's buried now. But he died in Onehunga. So I was like, that is interesting, because they both died in the same. And I wonder if they knew each other. So now I'm going back. I'm looking through electoral rolls, because the electoral rolls have where they lived and who their wives were and all that. So now I'm going back through those to see if I can see anything in those. So I had double trouble. I had two people, and this happens a lot. This happens a lot where you get, this is why it is so important to keep track of all your going, and why this program Goldie May comes in handy so much, because I could then take those two profiles out of my tree and have them run the subway map, and I could then see the differences in their timeline. Yes, they were born a year apart. Now, it's quite common for that to happen, especially back in the 1800s when you're looking at some records, because some people were not registered for birth at the time of birth. It might have been a year or two later, or the first you hear about it is when they're baptized, and they could be 5 years old by the time they're baptized. So to see that there, but then I went in with a definite purpose and typed in the full name, because when I do the birth, deaths, and marriage site, I go in there and I put in for the births, I put in the family name and the years I want to look between, and then I let it come up, and then I put it in order by the father, which is why I did not see the other guy. Lesson learned. Look for duplicate names. So, and sometimes I will put them in order of the child's name, but most times I put them in birth order by father, because then they get matched up with their wives and things. And sometimes you can see when a person got married a second time, and this is their first family, this is their second family. Other times you can see, okay, we've got somebody with the same name, and of course, the first guy didn't appear in the births for having fathered any children, because he didn't father any children at that early stage. It wasn't until years later, and he didn't have his middle name listed on the records when he did. So I was like, okay, so that's why I did not see two people with the same first and middle name. I only saw the one guy that was married to my great aunt, and it had her name there. So I thought, well, that was interesting. So there are times when you will get two people with exactly the same information, with basically the same information. They're close together in birth. They may have the same first name, middle name, and last name. The last time this happened to me, I was doing research for a client on her grandfather, I think it was. So either her grandfather or her great-grandfather in upstate New York. Now, we very quick, and I learned, and I got this one, I noticed this one very, very quickly because of the death notice for his mother. And in the death notice for her mother, it had a different wife's name, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And so I started investigating even further, and I found out that within 6 weeks, there was a 6-week period, there was 2 baby boys born in the same county in New York that had the same first name, middle name, last name, and their mother's first names were the same. Yes. So we had 2 guys who had married women with the same first name, and it was not a usual first name. Well, back then it kind of could have been. So it wasn't a very usual common first name. And so there were 2 of them. So then I had to follow very closely what I was looking at. Am I looking at baby A or baby B? Which one am I looking at? And it became, once we got to a certain point, it became very easy to decipher which one was which. But up until we got to that point, which was on a census report, they were basically running the same. But they were in the same county, born 6 weeks apart, and they had the same first name, middle name, and last name, and the mother's first name was the same. The mother's last name was different, but the mother's first name, which is on some birth records, it just had the mother's first name. It did not have what her maiden name was. And on some records, it would have the maiden name. And but because they were 6 weeks apart, and you're starting to see them, and getting married and all that, and they're 6 weeks apart, you kind of like think, oh, well, maybe one's a birth date and one's a baptismal date, and you start looking at different records to try and prove which record is which. So yeah, that was the last time I had one of those occur, but that was in somebody else's tree, and I guess I'm a little more cautious in somebody else's tree than I am in my own. I don't know. But yeah, so I found that one there. And even when I was explaining the tree to her afterwards, I says, now, if you do go doing your own research on this person, please be aware that there's actually 2 guys with exactly the same name. They both had the mother of this name, and they were born 6 weeks apart in the same county, but they had different fathers. And so she's like, got it. So I didn't even pick up on this one until today when I was looking through and found the military records. It was the military records that had the notice of death in there that said this guy died in 1964. And I'm like, hang on, I've got him down for 1953. So going in and having a look, and that's when I discovered that we had 2 guys, same first name, same middle name, same last name, different parents, completely different parents. So it was very interesting to untangle. So I've been spending the day untangling that mess, well, that misunderstanding, and basically taking the information, going, this is person A, who is the one that's in the tree. This is person B, who may fit in the tree somewhere along the way, but we're going to keep his records separate and over here on a little micro tree. So I have a little micro tree set up for person B, so I can keep an eye on that stuff over there. And when it comes to comparing them, I now know which one was born in which year. One was in 1890, the other one was in 1891. One was in January of 1890, the other one was in November of 1891. So there's almost 2 years between them. Just a year calendar-wise. So yeah, so be cautious when you are looking. Check for other people with the same names that may be born around the same time, and then you got to figure out which is which. And how do you do that? Well, if you know who the parents are, it makes it a little easier. If you don't know who the parents are, then you sort of got to keep. This when I pull spreadsheets out. Now I have a guy on my mother-in-law's side of the family who has a very common name. And I have found several records with this very common name in. And I'm trying to make sure that I get the exact right one, because according to this, FamilySearch.org has a relative finder. And the relative finder is you take your number from FamilySearch.org. Everybody gets given when you upload sheets, when you upload the family trees and stuff, everybody gets given a code. So you take that code, and because I'm logging in under my name, they already know what my code is. But they tell me who I'm related to. But I can take other people's codes, like my mother-in-law's, stick it in there and go who she related to. And that's how we found that she is possibly the 9th great-granddaughter of Richard Warren from the Mayflower. And when I mentioned this to one of her sons, he goes, oh yeah, he says, I remember Mum talking about that, and that there's a possibility in that. Now, she didn't have computers when she was doing any of this research. Her research was all done in libraries, writing the old-fashioned way, in the archives, writing letters, getting into cars, driving to different places, writing to different repositories, writing to different genealogists in different countries, different family research places, and all that sort of stuff. Talking with family members. So a lot of it was the old-fashioned way that we used to research, which is a lot of fun. We still get to do some of that because some of the records are not available online. If you want to know how much of the records are available online, it's 5%. It is around 5% of all the records in all the world, all births, deaths, marriages, land deeds, everything. Every document, there's about 5% of them online, maybe less. And that's not just me saying that. I'm doing a class and we had an archivist come in. She's from Tennessee. She was awesome. I learned a lot about what she does as an archivist and where she works in the county, and how she keeps all these different, not only county records, but people who have lived in the county bring some of their stuff over, like journals and their records and stuff, to be archived. And she said, and she believes it's actually less than 5% of all records that are out there online. And she said there will never, ever, ever be a 100% complete record of your family tree going back generations, and that because of natural disasters, fires, wars, where documentation has been lost due to natural causes or human causes. So she said nobody will ever find a complete set of their family tree going back in time. And some are like, yep, I totally get that. Totally get it. Totally understand it. But it is the ultimate puzzle. Genealogy is the ultimate puzzle. We're playing hide and seek with dead people. I actually have a t-shirt that says genealogy. It's like playing hide and seek with dead people. It's on a t-shirt that I have, and I love that because that's basically what we're doing. And we're having to play detective and investigators and researchers, and we're looking at these records, and we have to analyze them and decide, does this fit in? Is this the record that I'm missing from this particular area of the family tree, or does this belong to a different person? And that's basically what I've spent the day doing, untangling this great uncle who married into the family, been untangling his tree, but I still need him in the tree because there is a DNA match that comes up through that line. So yeah, and I want to know when my great aunt died, when my great grand aunt died. I still don't know. I sent a note to a cousin who I thought would know because her mom had a whole bunch of genealogy stuff and all that, and she's like, everything you've told me is all the information that I have. And I'm like, damn it. So I just sent her today. I sent her another thing saying, guess what I found? And basically laid out how I found these two guys with basically the same information, and how I discovered that there's actually two of them, and all of that sort of information too. So I'm curious to see what she's going to respond back on that one. But then I thought, well, hang on, my aunt seems to know some records too for that side of the family. So maybe she might have that information. So I'm going to send a note off to her and see if she has that information. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll keep you posted on that one, on the double trouble. But sometimes we do come across those. Sometimes I can pick them up really early. Like if I'm doing, and like I said, this was initial cursory first look when I put this information into the system. So now I was going back and doing a deeper research, and that's when the error occurred, because now I had new records that proved something completely different. It proved a different story. So I had to go and unravel the story. And that happens. It happens a lot. It happens a lot more than you think it does. So just be aware of it, that when you're doing a cursory first look, and I do a first look, like I'll go in and say, okay, let's see what information any information I can pull about this person, let's go and pull it. And then if it looks close to what I'm looking for, I put it there. But I also have my notes that are going at the same time, and I've got the Goldie May thing app going with all of that, so I can go do the subway maps afterwards. So then I can turn around and go, okay, let's have a look at this information. If it kind of looks like it might fit, I put it there, but I have a note next to it stating that I'm just putting this here. I need to come back and look at this because I need to do further research on this. And I know the ones that they've got these really cool little flag markers in Ancestry that you've got a place where you can put notes, you can put comments. They also have different tags that you can use, and you can create your own tags and things. And like, this is under research, or this is now complete. I have very, very, very few of this research is complete, because to me, the research will never be complete. And it would depend on my terms of complete. I want all the information there about that person. I want to know as much detail about their life as possible. What historical events did they live through? Did they not live through? Like the one yesterday when we told you about the earthquake, the Napier earthquake from 1931, where we had somebody on the tree who had passed because she was in the nursing home that got hit. In the nursing home or the hospital? In the hospital. She was a patient in the hospital that got destroyed in the earthquake. So, that was one of those unfortunate things, but it's a historical event. It affected the family. So there's looking at it that way. It's a historic perspective thing that you're looking at. What was her life like? And so this is why I do what I do, and I love what I love, and I just get so much enjoyment out of it. But yeah, so unraveling one person into two, that's a lot of fun. Because now you're double checking, and what's good, because I was able to double check my research and go, okay, I see where I screwed up with that one. That goes over to this person over here. So I've got person A, which is in my tree, and I've got person B, which could possibly be in my tree. But the fact that they both died in the same town 11 years apart, I'm sort of like, maybe they knew each other. Maybe not. I don't know. I just thought it was a little too coincidental that but one was married, one was born in Wanganui, and one was born in Auckland. So I knew that they were born in different places. And I found the marriage notice in the newspaper for my great grand aunt when she got married to this guy. And it said that he was from Wanganui. And so I was like, okay, that's definitely that one there. And so, yeah, we were able to put pieces together. But it wasn't until I found the military records today on the National Archives site that I was like, oh, I have a different date. But I also have a cemetery record for this person with this name. So that's when the research started looking, and it's like, oh, we actually have two different people. They died 11 years apart, and my one died 11 years later than I thought he had. So I was unraveling a lot of stuff that way as well. So with that, I am out of here. So just this is why you need to keep detailed notes as you research your genealogy, so that you can go back and you can have a look. So if you come across something that's sort of like, oh, there's actually two people here with the same names, born around the same time, we need to separate them. So that's why it's always handy to have all your research notes handy, and keep detailed research notes of where you've gone, what you've seen, what you've looked through, so you can go back and you can double check the records. Yep, that one was a good record. That one's not. That needs to get moved over to this guy over here. This, and just walk through step by step by step. I still have not found my great grandaunt's death date. I'll keep you posted on that one. But for now, I am confident that I have the two gentlemen completely separate on separate areas of my tree, one in a micro tree, one in the main tree. I now have been through and separated their records into the right profiles. And yes, it's very interesting. It was very interesting seeing that. But I tell you this, it gave me a thrill. I got heart got pumped. So like, oh, got a mystery to solve. Yes, let's go do it. So, and with that, I'm out of here. I don't even know what today's been. It's been very focused on this. But I did take a nap this afternoon. I did have to go and take a nap. I had to take a break, go have some lunch, and then I decided I need a nap. We slept for 2.5 hours. It felt good. It felt refreshing. It got the brain had a lot that it was processing from the morning. So we spent the morning doing that, afternoon napping, and now here we are. Now we're going to go for, oh, there she is, WALK. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. We'll